everybody, welcome back to the journey of my YouTube channel. Today should be fun because I am talking about my top 10 sci-fi reads so far, like at all, from all the sci-fi that I've ever read, which is actually not all that much. I only really started reading sci-fi about 2 years ago when I watched Rogue One and started reading Skyward in the same weekend, and then I came up with a sci-fi book idea that I wanted to write, and I was like, I have hardly read any sci-fi books at all. I'm going to need to read more and get to know the genre a little bit better before I try to write in it. So for the last 2 years, I have been guzzling down all the sci-fi that I can, and especially trying to hit all of the sci-fi classics. So today I am going to share with you what I think are the best of those books that I've read so far. I've read, I think, exactly 30 sci-fi books to date. So this is that top tier, the top third, and I am excited to let you know which ones they are, and you should all let me know what your favorite sci-fi books are too, which ones I should read next, maybe which ones I have read that I should learn to appreciate more. I definitely want to hear from you guys on this too. And if you think that I'm going to take forever talking about 10 books, which is possible, I'll try to keep it fairly short, but it might help that I'm starting with 3 at once. So my number 10, number 9, and number 8 sci-fi books are Skyward Starsight, Cytonic, from the Cytoverse series by Brandon Sanderson. And I'm really not sure how to rank them within the series. I read Skyward and Starsight 2 full years ago, and I remember at the time thinking I liked Starsight even better than Skyward, so that's a sequel that I at least thought at the time was better than the original. But the more that I think about it later, the more I'm like, I really like Skyward. I think maybe that was actually my favorite over Starsight. And then I read Cytonic and I was like, I have absolutely no idea how I would rank this one in relation to the other ones. But I definitely enjoyed all 3 of them. The first book is about Spensa, who lives with a human colony that is stuck underground on a planet. If they try to come up to the surface of the planet, they will get bombed out of existence by aliens called the Krell. At least I'm pretty sure that's accurate to the setup. Again, it's been a little bit since I read it, and it just felt very classic hero adventure novel to me, but sci-fi. So I really enjoyed that. It's very YA, but I had a lot of fun with it. And then in Starsight, of course, I can't talk very much about it without spoilers, but it's a little bit broader setting. It goes beyond just the one planet, and we get to know some more alien races, and the theme really starts getting more deepened and developed here, more nuanced, which made it feel a little bit less like that classic hero's journey. But I think that's also part of the point, that Spence's hero's journey has a little bit more nuance than maybe the classic formula. And then Cytonic, which of course I can say even less about without giving spoilers for the first book, but in some ways, especially the first third to a half of this book, and in some ways the whole thing, sort of return to the classic adventure, not exactly formula, but structure, I guess. And I enjoyed the fact that it is largely a quest plot. I talked about that in my August TBR video, that I was happy about the quest plot. I finished it now. I definitely liked it. And again, there are definitely some twists on the hero's journey quest plot idea. So I don't know. If I had to pick right now, I would probably put Skyward at the top, maybe Cytonic second, and Starsight third. But again, I thought that Starsight was better than Skyward on the first read, so if I reread these, I have no idea what the order of the 3 would be. But number 10, number 9, number 8. Okay, number 7 is The War of the Worlds, and I know I've already showed this book on my channel several times, but it is a really good book. It's a really nice hardcover, and it has 4 different books inside it. And the first one in the collection, and the first one that I read, is The War of the Worlds, which is, of course, famous for the time in the 1930s, I think, when it was being read on the radio, and people believed that it was real, and there was a Martian invasion, and there was all this panic. So I'd heard that story my entire life, and had certain ideas about what the story would be, and it was pretty different from what I expected. I thought that it was going to feel a lot more crazy, I guess. I thought that it was going to be little green men, but as I was reading it, I was thinking, okay, I can actually understand how you could hear this on the radio and think that it was really happening because it is very detailed. It has a lot of really cool sensory details. It was really immersive, which this is from 1898, I think, and some books from that time period may not have as many sensory details as we're used to. Sometimes they're not written as cinematically as more recent books, but this one I thought that the details were really riveting. I thought the protagonist, the unnamed first person protagonist, was very believable. He wasn't always like the most morally amazing. He wasn't really a hero. He just felt very much like a real person having to experience this. It's also eerie to read still in the aftermath of 2020 because there were some parallels between the Martian invasion and certain recent events that are kind of hard not to draw, and I thought it was really realistic how the people's reactions were portrayed. I kept reading it like, yep, that's how people were in this situation. Like, yeah, that's probably what would happen if the Martians did this. I also thought his take on the Martians themselves was pretty unique and interesting, even though this is so old and it's been an inspiration for so many sci-fi stories that have come since then. It still felt really original well over 100 years later. So I just thought it was a really cool story. I think there's a widespread complaint about the ending, that it basically ends a little bit too easily, and I can see that. I don't really know how else it would have ended, at least not without just being incredibly depressing. So I was okay with it, but I do think that's a fair critique of the book. But I still thought it was a super fun reading experience and definitely educational about where sci-fi has come from over the past 130 years. Okay, I am already taking longer on this than I meant to, but that's okay. So, number 6 is The Electrical Menagerie. I love featuring indie books, and this one particularly does not get enough attention. I'm really sad that more people haven't read this because everybody needs to read this. It is so much fun. It is basically like The Greatest Showman in space with robots. It just has a super fun world with both the space elements and the Victorian elements, and the competition plot is so much fun. Sylvester Carthage is the main character, and I think we have pretty much the exact same personality. I related to him maybe to an uncomfortable extent, and also R. Brooke Huxley is like the secondary protagonist, and he's so great too. And the dynamic between those two is hilarious, but also like it can be serious when it needs to be. It can be really impactful. There's an amazing robot character named Dominic. And there's mystery and suspense and trains going through the sky, and it is just such a good time, but it is also like it's not just silly. It has some thematic weight and depth, and I really need to read this again. I haven't read it in a couple years, and now I'm feeling very ready to read it again. There is supposed to be a sequel. I've been waiting for it for a long time, and I will buy it the day it comes out. Number 5 is Dune, which was my number 1 book of 2021. The odd thing about this one is that the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of uncertain about it. I have such mixed feelings about it. I really enjoyed the movie. I read the next 2 books in the series, and I have even more mixed feelings about them. I do think the writing in this is absolutely amazing. Just the thing about Dune, I don't even think this counts as a spoiler because it's all over the internet already. This first book is more of a typical hero's journey. Boy discovers that he has powers and he's the chosen one, and he's going to rule the universe and such. But then the future books are about the problems with that, the pitfalls with that, and what happens to people who put too much trust in a ruler. So that is definitely a fascinating angle to look at. I felt like the angle the story went in was a little depressing, and it was not quite for me, but I can still definitely appreciate what it did. And this book especially, I really liked the characters. The dynamics between them were pretty amazing. There was so much tension an internal conflict that was really interesting rather than just stuff exploding and getting shot up, as is kind of the sci-fi stereotype. There are so many people in this book who are so smart and so good at what they do that it kind of makes me feel bad about myself. It makes me feel like I need to go study something for 12 solid hours because everybody in this is just so on top of it, and they're making, as the book says, plots within plots within plots, and deceit within deceit within deceit, and it's just kind of amazing how intricate all of the characters' plans and goals are, and they keep surprising you with what they're actually trying to do, and it kept me riveted for all 800 pages, so it's a little bit hard to argue with that. Number 4 is Out of the Silent Planet, the first book in the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, which I unfortunately don't have, and I really should get. This is one of the very few sci-fi books that I actually read a long time ago. I read this back in 2017, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. The most memorable part for me was when one of the human scientists from Earth was arguing with the ruler of Mars that humans should come and colonize Mars, and the ruler of Mars was having a discussion with him about why he disagreed with that, and it was so fascinating to read, and it was also really funny to read. I thought Ransom was a really interesting character. I liked how the alien races were portrayed as not knowing less than the humans. Like, the humans needed to learn from the aliens, probably even more than the aliens needed to learn from the humans, and that was a concept that I hadn't really considered before at that point. So that was kind of impactful when I read that as a 15-year-old, just an interesting perspective shift, like, oh, maybe we don't know everything. So I definitely appreciated that about it. Of course, the world building is really cool, the different races who live on Mars. There's also a part where one of the Martians talks about how there is cheese on Mars, and I found that really enjoyable because I really like cheese. Plus, it's C.S. Lewis, so if you like C.S. Lewis and the themes that he always writes about, they're very much there in this book too, in kind of an earlier form than some of his books. Number 3 is Ender's Game. This is not Ender's Game, but it's in the same series, and I just got Ender's Game from the library, so I don't have a physical book for it. And I've talked about this one before too in another video. I don't remember which video, but I'll find it and I'll put up a card to it. But it starts out very brutal and kind of hard to read because a lot of terrible things are being done to very small children. Specifically, little kids get drafted and taken to battle school, and they're essentially being trained as child soldiers in space to fight these aliens who are about to wipe out humanity. Ender Wiggin is one of these kids, and he's the smartest and he can beat everyone. But if that sounds like a trope where the main character just happens to be better at things than everybody else, that's kind of not how it goes, and there's definitely a heavy price to pay for all of Ender's abilities. But even though it sounds so dark, and it is so dark, it has a really amazing ending. It has some really amazing themes. It was hard to read, but it was so worth reading. And especially when I got to the ending, I kind of thought, man, there is no way for this to end happily. And then it kind of did. So that was one of my favorite endings that I read last year. And it really made me want to read more of the series. I didn't read more of the series for a while, but then I did. And so I'll talk about that more in a minute. At number 2, I have Paralandra, so the second book in the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, and I really could have ranked that kind of anywhere in this top 4. There's not a huge difference for me in quality between these books. How do you even compare them? But Paralandra, I do think I liked slightly better than Out of the Silent Planet. I don't even really know why, but it takes place on Venus, where Venus is a paradise planet. It has not had a fall, so it is still perfect, and Ransom is sent there basically to keep the fall from happening in that world. And the villain is really intimidating, maybe not in some ways like the scariest villain that I've ever read about, but there are definitely horror elements to the villain, especially the fact that he was human, and what has happened to him is pretty disturbing to read about, but in a way that fits the book's theme and tone really well. There's some really cool symbolism at the ending. I haven't read, I think, any other books that take place in a world that is not fallen, because probably one of the main reasons for that is there's not a lot of conflict or tension in a world where the people haven't turned bad yet, but there is a lot of conflict and tension in this story anyway, and there are these huge stakes of, is the perfect state of this world going to be able to continue and grow, or is it going to become a disaster like Earth? Number one, my favorite sci-fi book that I've read. And honestly, the Space Trilogy books could have taken this spot. They're really, really high. They're very close to the top. They could have counted as number one. But I've read this more recently, so it's fresher in my mind, and I think it deserves the spot. Speaker for the Dead, I've definitely talked about this on the channel before, so I will link to those videos. But again, it really comes down to the themes and how they're handled, and especially in the climax, how everything comes together. This is the second book in the Ender's Game series. This is when Ender is an adult, but it mostly takes place on this one planet. It's a small scale story for sci-fi. It's very character focused for sci-fi and relationship focused, and I think that is a lot of what makes it so strong, is that it knows what it's focused on and it does a really good job with that. There's also cool aliens and some mystery, although if you read the preface and introduction and stuff, then there's a lot less mystery, because there are some straight up spoilers in the beginning material, at least to this edition, so be aware of that if you have not read the book yet. But anyway, and it's so short. It's so short for a sci-fi book, but it packs a big punch, and it's so worthwhile. And so yes, my favorite sci-fi book so far, so there you go. Okay, once again, let me know, what are your favorite sci-fi books? What would you like to see in the sci-fi book that I'm working on right now? And let me know, what is your favorite alien race that you've ever read about in a sci-fi book? Today's t-shirt of the week is the most recent addition to my t-shirt collection. I got this just last week, and it is my Pumpkin Run t-shirt. The Pumpkin Run is a local fundraiser that raises funds for cancer research. It's raised a lot of money for cancer research, which is pretty cool. And I got this at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. Yes, I go to my city's Chamber of Commerce meetings for my small business. It's a thing that I do. It's actually kind of fun. And last time they were giving out these t-shirts, they were shooting them from, well, I guess somebody was just throwing them. I don't think they had a t-shirt cannon. But I picked up one of them, and I really want to wear it. Maybe I will wear it sometime, but it's also extra large, and I'm not extra large, so maybe I will figure out a way that I can wear it anyway. But I like that it's red. I have a few red t-shirts, but not that many, and I like that it gives a shout out to the Pumpkin Run. Okay, everybody, that's enough for this time. This one got kind of long, so if you're still here, thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for journeying with me. Bye!